So my role was to propose the understanding of the clinical trials and their impact. And I really thought that I will talk a bit about the clinical trial, but I will not detail any of them. And especially, I will keep some of the impact for another talk. So I will be invited to another webinar. And knowing that taking the micro after Massimo and Anna, much will be already very nicely explained and details. So here are my disclosures. I work in the hospital. I have a research team, but I'm proud also to work much with the private partners because, as you will see, and as Anna showed you and Massimo in a while, this is a common work that we are doing here together. So my outline, I had so many questions that I would have loved to answer. And as I said, our goal is to go for a better future for kids and families with Dravet syndrome. And for me, as a doctor involved in rare epilepsies, to take this model and to expand it also for other rare epilepsies. Just to remind you, for those who are not much aware about what is going on when we talk about a trial initiates with ideas and discovery. Massimo showed you much about it, and this is what we call the preclinical study. And in Dravet syndrome, the fact of having these different models helped much to be able to understand mechanism, to elaborate ideas of new therapies, but also to test therapies that we can move from the laboratory to the human part. In the human studies, and this is typically the typical presentation, and I will tell you a bit more that things have changed also a bit, but the ideas are always there. We have to have the human safety. We have to be sure that this drug is safe in human and on very small number of patients. And this part was done for different medication on healthy people, on people that do not have the disease. But you can understand if we are developing a gene therapy for an abnormal or a defect in a gene, we will need to test this first step even on patients and to merge it with the second step that is an expanded human safety on a bit larger number. And think about the numbers in rare diseases, and definitely the community of Dravet patients offered much in the numbers, and I will address this after also. And then we will move for this, what we call the efficacy and safety, what is classically the phase 3, but you can forget about the numbers, and where we will often, until date, and it will change, but not yet, we will do these randomized controlled trials that I will talk to you about. Just remember something, that the end of the trial is not at all the end of the story. Anna told you about some trials that do not reach the threshold needed by the regulators, by the European Medical Agency, the American medical agencies, and other agencies to test that this drug is efficient and safe, because we will have other steps that I will not discuss today. You will see there are so many things that I will ask to come back to do other webinars. What I wanted to emphasize is this timeline is really very summarized here, because we have the impression that at each step it's the same, but it's not the case at all, because the preclinical studies, Massimo showed you how many there are, they can take much longer time, and it might take several years. And what is important to know is that these preclinical studies, all of them will not reach the trials in human, and it is not a loss of possibilities, but it is important to understand that there is research that cannot be used for a trial, but it's always valuable to understand better the disease. And definitely, if we are decreasing the numbers, we will have less and less in the market. And I will not address the market access. That is, again, another topic. Just to let you know that who is who in clinical trials. There are different people there. I told you about the researchers that we cannot see there, that can be academia and that can be also pharma. You should understand that industry, pharma industry have huge research departments. So the pharma industries, it is the regulators. I told you about FDA and EMA, and those are a bit the people that are the guardians of our what is going on. If not, I can tell you today, okay, let's try this drug to see if you will feel better. And it's good to have them, but we should know that today they are listening more and more to the patients, and we are going more and more to be involved with them as specialists, as patients, and it is important. The CROs are the people that work on the trial logistics. They are very important, but they are not directly involved in the trial and the science, I would say, but they are very important because they are the link with the specialists. There are definitely the physicians and the medical facilities, and I will tell you about this a bit more. And most importantly, there are you, because without the patients, there are no trials and there are no development of whatever. So where do we perform clinical trials? And this is expanding much. I put some images from our institution, but it may apply to many institutions. We have clinical investigation centers that have experts, that have technical support, that can provide what is needed for all the process of a clinical trial, filling the papers, do the monitoring, answer the questions, and so on. And all of this can be done in hospital facilities, but more and more, and for some trials, we are going to these mobile units of clinical investigation center. And we have one of them in our center, for instance, and more, and when it is possible for home trials, when there are no major interventions. And I did not put this just to put lovely images. You should know that each department of the hospital may be needed, especially sometimes, hopefully not in the case of your trials, the intensive care and the observational places. Don't read this because it is, in my opinion, very aggressive, not because every single word should be detailed, and it is too much even sometimes for the doctors. So don't worry if you did not understand all what I was saying. What I wanted to tell you that there are some important points to understand, and you need explanation. Don't be shy to ask for explanation for the consents of the trial, because there might be words that you cannot understand, and this is normal. And what I wanted to share with you are 2 or 3 of these terms. The first one is in a randomized control trial versus placebo, and I will show you what it will give as a scheme. What is randomization? Randomization is to take randomly, when you have a population that you defined, patient with Dravet syndrome, with SCN1A mutation, having more than X number of seizures per month, not having another disease. This is the population. And in order not to put all good cases with the drug and all bad cases without the drug, so our results will be completely insane, we do this randomization that today is automatic. It's not myself that I pick the red ball or the black ball. And the randomization, so reinforce, consolidate the results of what we are having, and if the drug is in relation with the effect that we obtained in relation with the intervention. The placebo, this is another point. If I give the drug, I can give it alone, but also to take out the effect of having a drug, and that is even seeing more often the doctor. This is what we call the placebo effect. The placebo is a drug that is similar to the active substance and that does not have any efficacy. It tastes the same, it looks the same, it measures the same, and it is administered in the same way. So we need, as I told you, to define a population selection, what we are comparing, and what we want to achieve in a trial. Anna told you about, and Massimo about that we need more than seizure outcomes, because the trial is defined, is organized, the number of patients included are in relation to what we are looking for. So all the other parts will give us ideas, but if our trial is designed for seizures, what we will understand from non-seizure effect that we call the secondary endpoints will not have a very important evidence and confidence, but it will be helpful and we should do it. The time when to measure the outcome, I will show this to you. And I always say double blind is not that we close our eyes and the family and the patient should close their eyes when they are taking the drug. It is that no one knows who is taking the active drug and who is taking the placebo. How does it go in these classical randomized controlled trials? We will recruit upon the eligibility criteria that are defined. And here there is much of frustration, because if your child is having 3 seizures per month and the criteria is 4, when he will enter the baseline, if he will have 3, he will not be included. And this is madness, but it is what it is. And then when the patients are randomized, they will have one arm will have the placebo, the other will have the active drugs. Sometimes we have 2 doses of active drugs. So it is a 3 arms study, or it is only a 2 arms study. And what is important to know that all of those patients will go into an open label extension, all of them receiving the active drug, and this is very important. And very quickly, when we will end the trial, definitely we do not have yet all the results, so everyone will keep on, has the right to have the medication till we have the conclusion of the analysis, have an early access to the medication till we have the medication in the pharmacy and he can go and have it with a prescription. So this is your right, and this is ethics of a clinical trial. How can I participate? The information is important. Your physician should know about the trial, but your federations and your associations are very important. And we should think about how to reach all, but explaining that, I'm sorry, Anna, it will not be 400 patients that will be included in the trials. The trials will include a certain number of patients, and very quickly we hope that we will move to the next step because of these criteria of inclusion. So this is the eligibility that is imposed by the study for the I would say, how this study can go, and the consent, this is what will explain all of this to you. The timeline, if I will go into a study, how much does it last? And can I have other trials at the same time? Can I have other medication at the same times? So for each study, there are rules. Usually we are not able to be included in different trials. And this is something that might change, and it changed in some in some domains, not yet in the epilepsy domain. And you can think about 6 to 8 months for the trial as a whole, and don't think of it about the placebo as a curse, because you will have the medication after some months, a few months, and that we need this arm today for our trials. And much is done to exclude maybe the placebo from the trials in rare diseases. Why I talked about the placebo? Because it was like, is it true? Is it not true? Definitely there is an effect of placebo. I will not detail it, but we can have a clinical improvement only by having something that is similar to a drug without a drug. There are things that are related to the disease, like the fluctuation from the mean, what is remarkable in seizures, but there are really psychological factors and experimenter and patient bias that are important. So for date, placebo is important. What I wanted to tell you, that how to deliver the drug in some therapies. In some of them, it's a liquid. In some, it's some pills. But you should know, and Anna showed you a bit of that, that in some of the gene therapies, we will have to give the medication within within the central nervous system, with the different methodologies. We can discuss about that. And what is important to know, that even in these therapies, there will be a request for another type of placebo that we call sham, which means we will mimic, or we will do the same intervention without giving the drug, and just think that this sham also can help us, like for intrathecal administration of drugs, to understand the reaction of our central nervous system for the drug. So it is highly important that we think about it, and that you can understand its importance. And where clinical trials may not fully answer, I told you that we are having a cluster of patients. We will not treat all the patients with a trial. In many of these, and you saw some of them, we will treat only the children. But what about the adults? Their needs, their endpoints. The impact beyond seizures, although in this talk today, is secondary endpoint, although in some of the gene therapies. So it is still important, waiting for other type of trials to have collection of data, and this is what we call the real-world data and the long-term follow-up. What are the real-world data? Is everything that we have on a patient. We can use it to better understand if there are changes in the natural history of Dravet syndrome in 10 years, for instance, after initiating this type of new therapies, or after the validated drugs and things like that. This is a huge aspect today in the science of rare diseases and common diseases, but you should know about it, that these are important things that we will need to work with you on collecting, or even on, I would say, exploring. And I will end with these 2 slides. The future is now, and I fully agree with Anna. And I took off my 2025 slide because I saw hers. So Dravet syndrome is an amazing model for rare epilepsies, mainly because of you, because of the community of Dravet syndrome. And the PP is the 3P. It's about the patient, it's about the physicians and the researchers, and it's about the private partners and the pharma. Many new therapies are next door. I will not emphasize that. They are based on interesting mechanisms. They are targeting the gene. They are aiming the whole disease and not only the seizures, but be aware about expectations and wish lists. And Anna would fully agree with me if I will say that not all the patients treated with the gene assimilated therapy and the ASO had this same result and had this over 80% of improvement in all the domains. And this is why there is still a need for a phase 3 for the trial that is arriving in Europe, where we hope that we will have very good results. Because if it was so obvious and everything was resolved, there is no need to continue trials. And the future is now, and sooner is better. We talked about this, when to give the gene therapy or the ASO as soon as possible, but we should not forget about the adults. We should not forget about the maturation of the brain, and we should not forget that our brain forms from the first weeks of gestation, and we will be able to reverse many things, but we should be very aware about our expectations and how we should study them. The efforts of rare and complex epilepsy. I'm part of the network, founder of the network EpiCare, and all the rare diseases projects and pharma that are interested in rare disease are allies for us to optimize what is already validated, for whom I should use what, to keep on research, and Massimo showed you marvelous ways to keep on looking to better understand things and promote clinical trials based on the patients and family needs, definitely for a better life for children and adults with Dravet syndrome. So with this, I would say thank you. Our institute changed its colors today for the Rare Diseases Day. You can see my badge here, and I'm really happy to work. I'm sorry, I did not put everyone. I know very well the UK group, the German group. I put the Federation, I put my French Alliance, and I hope that we will be able to keep on working in the same way again. And thank you again, Simona and Miguel.